we will just go ahead and get started. I want to say welcome to everyone. We're excited you're here for our February meeting. I have a few things that I wanted to and Marianne put most of these in the slideshow at the beginning, but in case you missed the slideshow, I kind of wanted to go over a few things. First, we have the Save the Date for Kentucky SHRM Action, where you can go and you can hear from senators, representatives, members of the executive branch, and the executive director and special advisor to the governor from the Office of Medical Cannabis. It's an opportunity for you to hear what has already happened in this session and what items are being pushed through the legislature this year. And I'm going to put the link for you to register into the chat. We also have our March membership drive. We are working with Kentucky SHRM to try and bring in 6 new members during the month of March. For every member who brings in a new member, you will have your name registered and your new member's name registered to win a free registration for the Kentucky SHRM conference in August, which is about an $1,100 value. So that's a pretty good deal. Excuse me, we plan to draw for that at our conference on March 21st. So from now till March 21st, please work to try and get someone to join, because we really do, one of our goals for this year is to up our membership. So any help you can provide would be appreciated, and you might win a free conference registration. One of the things the board talked about when we met last week that we want to do for our members this year is try to increase connection. And we've thought of 2 different ways to try and help with that. One is something that we're calling like meetups. It's basically going to be throughout the year. We are going to have different times when members get together in person, because we do a lot of things virtually. We think it'd be nice to have time to get to really know each other and make professional connections and form friendships, and give you all the opportunity to meet in person. So be on the lookout for details that will be coming about those. Something else that we're going to start as of today, we're calling the after show. And you may have seen Marianne's fantastic graphic. I wish the video had worked, but the graphic's awesome. And it is basically just going to be time after the meeting where we're going to do kind of a speed networking. We're going to have a topic. Today, I think the topic is going to be in light of everything that has happened politically, how are you approaching DEI in your workplace? Because for some of our people who deal with federal contracts, that's going to be different from other employers. And I just thought we could discuss it generally, how we're going to approach it now. But we'll be doing this monthly. I'm very open to suggestions, would love to hear your ideas on what are good topics for us to talk about. The only other thing I will add is if you have not yet paid your membership invoice, I urge you to do so now. And if you did not receive your membership invoice, please reach out to Ray Hall, and we will put her email in the chat so that you can get that invoice taken care of. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Sarah, to give your report to the chapter if you have one.
Melissa, I don't have anything for the chapter right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan Waddell, our treasurer, is not here today. I don't see Catherine on the call as our past president. Ray, do you have anything you'd like to share as membership chair?
Good morning. I would like to thank the 46 people who paid invoices in February. So right now we do have 76 members paid up in dues. Thank you all who have taken care of those invoices. If you have not received an invoice and you would like one to join Four Rivers SHRM, we just reach out to me. I am putting my email in the chat. I'm happy to call you and meet up and answer any questions you may have. Our goal for membership is to reach 100 people this year. We got really close last year. So I hope that our incentive that we're offering for March Madness leading up to the conference, that you take advantage of that, invite a friend, and remember that your friend who joins Four Rivers SHRM gets their name put in for that chance, and so do you. So we're really hoping that everyone takes advantage of this. I'm sure everyone has one person that they could invite, so please think about doing that. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Ray. Rachel is not on the call today, so she will not be updating us. Just a reminder, though, that our conference is coming up on March 21st. I believe the link to register was in and will continue to be in our newsletter. So please, if you're planning to attend the March 21st conference, please jump in there and register for that, so we are prepared with enough food and availability. And then I believe that leads us to you, Deb.
Good morning, everyone. Well, I'm pleased to announce our 2025-26 Four Rivers SHRM Scholarship. We did this last year and we had great success with it. And we also wanted to continue that this year. What it is two $2,000 scholarships. We'll award $1,000 in the spring, a fall, and $1,000 in the spring. And these are, the eligibility is for at least a sophomore in college that is pursuing an HR program of study. Or if you're a Four Rivers SHRM member, another perk of being a Four Rivers SHRM member, Ray, and to incentivize people to join in good standing who is continuing their education in HR or management program of study, undergrad or grad, is also eligible for this scholarship. So there's so many wonderful perks being a member of Four Rivers SHRM, and this is just another one that continues your education to grow and succeed. So if you know of anyone that would be interested in applying, you can apply. This information, the flyer, and the application is at fourrivers.shrm.org/news, or I will put my email in the chat and you can reach out to me directly and I'll be glad to send you an application.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you. That's
You're
great. Let's see. I don't know if Marianne, do you have an update for the group?
Just the fact that we are recording this video and that we will have it posted to our YouTube channel on Friday. As always, you can see any of our previous meetings on our YouTube channel. The links will be in our newsletter.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you for all you do in getting that newsletter and all of our social media posts. It keeps us all up to date. If you don't follow Four Rivers SHRM on LinkedIn or Facebook, please go do so, because there's a lot of useful information and Marianne works really hard to make sure we all have that information. Let's see. Paige, do you have anything to share with the group?
I don't really have anything today. I am still working on that article for, everybody else doesn't know that. I've been asked to draft an article for Kentucky SHRM, just kind of about our stance on DEI and like as a state, and then just kind of use it as an educational piece to kind of educate everyone on what, DEI truly is. And, as Kentucky SHRM, how we plan to move forward, even with some of the things coming down the pipeline. So I am working on that. My laptop died yesterday right when I was in the middle of writing it. So the goal is to get that done today and get that sent to Katie Rainey. And so be on the lookout for that and share it whenever they get it posted.
Well, I'll look forward to it. Thanks, Paige.
Thanks.
All right. And with that, Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can welcome our guest.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. Today's speaker is Lakeesha Brown. Lakeesha is Vice President and Chief HR Officer for UConn and UConn Health. Lakeesha brings over 20 years of HR experience, including presenting on workplace respect and civility, reframing HR as a customer service function, and humanistic leadership. Lakeesha is also a passionate advocate for adults and children with disabilities and actively supports shared parenting laws. Her commitment to advocacy and community engagement reflects her belief in creating a better future for all. Welcome, Lakeesha. We're glad that you're here with us today.
Thank you so much. And I know we didn't really check my microphone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. I know that there's some dead space when we're communicating in Zoom, so please engage with me as much as you'd like. Send me a heart react or a thumbs down if you disagree with something. But just let me know that you're there. I'm so pleased to be here today. Thank you so much, Sarah, for extending this invitation. I feel like I can report out from sunny Connecticut because it is going to be almost 50 degrees here today, and we are coming out of -degree weather. So I'm feeling very positive and upbeat about that today. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. I know I've only got about 30 minutes, so I'll get right to it. But feel free to interrupt if you have any questions, and I'll leave some time at the end so that we can have some engagement if you'd like. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I can't really see anybody. Wonderful. So I'm here to talk today about the journey that I took specifically from specialist to chief human resources officer. And it really is about navigating the journey from going from a tactile worker as an individual contributor to a tactile leader, moving into the strategic and where we're thinking about things much further down the road and what that journey looks like. I think it's important for us to have these conversations, and I'm so pleased to be able to share this with this group of professionals today, because we don't in HR often get a lot of time to sit back and reflect on what do we want to do moving forward and how do we want to affect the business that we're participating in. We tend to be the worker bees and the backbone of an institution, and folks come to us and ask us all the things that have anything related to humans. And for instance, I run human resources for higher education for the University of Connecticut, but also for an academic medical center. So that's a medical school, dental school, occupational medication, and then hospital system, healthcare, surgery center. And people come to me for everything from, why didn't somebody move the trash bin out of the hallway, to the disruptive patient that's, been yelling at their spouse in the hallway. So we get asked to do a lot of things that we're not even involved in, but nobody ever really sits down and talks to us about our own journey and what our needs are. So I'm thrilled to be able to be here to talk about that with you all and hopefully inspire some folks to think even bigger and broader for themselves. So our goal today is to really define what's the difference between being a tactical worker and leader and a strategic one. Both are equally important. We need both. You can't just have strategic leaders where you're looking to the future because then nothing gets done. And then you can't have all worker bees because you're just going nowhere. You're just working in circles. So it's important to have both. I think there's an advantage, though, when you are in a tactical role to be able to start to think strategically early on makes you more valuable. And it also makes your role much more fulfilling. I can tell you from my own experience, that's where things really began to change for me when I really started to see the bigger picture of an organization. And I really fell in love with what I do in my career. And that's what I hope to inspire for all of the folks that I present to, the folks that I supervise. I hope that they fall in love with whatever it is that they do. And I do understand HR is not for everyone. And it certainly isn't a role for the weak-hearted. I think those of us who show up to things like this know that. But it's a wonderful job for us to have. And just listening to all of you talk this morning in your report outs about how you'll be reflecting what does DEI really mean, and embracing what it means to provide the right supports and services for folks moving forward during tumultuous times is huge. And you are not alone. It feels very lonely right now, but you're not. And so what we do has great impact. And so we're going to talk about that from a bit of a higher level today. I'm going to talk a little bit about my career and my wacky journey. There's no such thing as a straight line to anything, and I hope that encourages others. But let's get right into it. So what is the difference between strategic and tactical leadership? So as individual contributors, we are tactical workers. So if you're working as a specialist in a role, you have a thing to do, that's what you're really good at, and you get that job done. Tactical leaders are the folks that take what the strategic leaders define as the goals and the mission and the future and break that down into the bite-sized pieces that will get us there. So again, you need both of those. As a tactical leader several years ago, I used to make decisions based on what was funneled down to me on how I would take the organization forward. So one of my last organizations, we were in a merger and acquisition mode. We were growing very quickly with a regional footprint. We were opening up businesses. The strategic leaders were telling us where we were going in the next 365 days. And my job was to take that information and break it down into bite-sized pieces for my staff to make sure that we met those goals over the upcoming year. Now, as a strategic leader, I'm the person who's looking forward that 365 days or beyond and delivering those goals to my staff, who then take that and break that down as tactical leaders. I do encourage them, though, and I talk very openly about strategic thought, because it's important for them to understand the bigger picture as they are breaking down those pieces of our mission. So I'm going to pause and talk a little bit about my not so straightforward timeline, because it's important to see where I began here and more of my tactical roles here on the left-hand side leading up to where I become more of a director. My roles in human resources started with someone saying, hey, you're really good with people. At the time, I was running services for adults with disabilities in group homes and residential settings throughout the community. And I had taken a leadership role that took me into more of the central office, and we had some demand for bargaining. We escaped that at the time, and I was a player in that. And so the leadership said, people really listen to you. Have you thought about human resources? And I'm like, human resources? Are those the people that hired me? That's all I knew about it when I walked in the door. I was sort of stumbling into it. And I was an HR department of 1 and then 2. And for those of you who are HR departments of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I sympathize with you, but I will tell you, you're the first people that I would hire for a leadership role, because you're the ones that have had to figure out how to do all of the things. And that really cut my teeth on HR and all of its forms, and on taking responsibility for a massive amount of work. I took a demotion to get into a career path that had greater opportunity by moving into state services. I moved on into labor relations by volunteering because it was an expertise that I was unfamiliar with. I didn't have labor unions in the private industry. And so I wanted to know more. I saw that the people who were really successful within state services had labor relations on their resume. So I volunteered to take on extra work, and my coworkers gave the giant eye roll, like, oh, show off. But it really was for me to be able to learn so that I could advance, and I did. I moved on to manager, assistant director. I've transitioned to many different organizations. I've been offered jobs from past leaders that I've worked for who've asked me to come back. And then you'll see later on, as I hit that director role, getting more towards the end of my career arc here, I took a demotion due to life changes. And I like to point that out, because I think a lot of us, especially women, tend to be hard on ourselves about having to take a step back because life changes happen. But the reality is the burdens of life tend to land on us as women. And I went through a divorce, and I decided I needed to focus on my children more than I needed to focus on my career. And I was so scared. I remember I took a picture and I posted it on Facebook of my offer letter to director. It was just this really huge moment in state service for me, and said, I'll be back someday, and doing the right thing for me and my kids for now. And I cried so hard that night when it was my last night on that job, because it was something I'd worked so very hard for. But I can tell you, looking back now, about a decade later, it was the greatest thing I'd ever done for myself and my children, because it gave me the time to settle us into our new life, to create strong family bonds that were important, and for me to still be able to earn a living that took care of us. And then I bounced back. And I think I came through that as a better leader, as a better HR person, as a better mom, and it has provided great value for me and for my organizations as a leader, that I understand the challenges that it takes to get through things. Sometimes we force ourselves to just continue to push and move and strive when life is telling us something different. If you believe in God like I do, sometimes God is talking, and you need to just silence yourself and listen. I make sure that I highlight that for anyone who ever asks me about my career arc, because people tend to look at me and say, wow, you just must be like a superstar. No, I was a hot mess right around that point. I was crying in the bathroom and wiping my eyes and grieving the loss of my marriage, and creating this new life for myself. And so I want to make sure that I highlight that before we get towards where really I am now in my career, which for me is my greatest honor. I did at some point change and took a leap to a for-profit organization, that organization where, we were growing regionally, and it was a wonderful experience. It was a crazy experience. I cut my teeth on real hard finance I call them finance bros. They were all Columbia MBA grads, and boy, did they pace me on how I talked to them about business. But they made me sharper and better. They burnt me out, but I learned a lot. And then I came back to my organization where I am now, to UConn Health, the academic medical center, invited to reapply with them as an employer, and then transitioned into this joint role, which is a first for our systems, are two completely different business entities, and one of the only in the country. I was talking to someone through National SHRM who said, I have no other clients that do what you do. So it's an interesting challenge, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. So that's my not so straightforward timeline, and I make sure to call that out so folks can feel encouraged by sometimes life sends you little bumps in the road and God talks. It's okay to listen.
Keisha, we want to see your nice timeline, but your slides are not advancing on our end.
Oh
Still
no!
on the introduction slide.
Let me unshare. Oh, it's such a pretty slide too.
Yeah.
Let's try sharing again.
You were doing such a great job. We didn't want to interrupt, but
Oh, you can interrupt anytime. Well, we'll have to go back to the slide. So let's test this one out.
It's such a beautiful story.
Okay.
Now I see embracing your inner leader.
Okay, so let's see now. Are you seeing anything change?
I see today's goal. And it's on the preview. It's not on like the full slideshow, if that's helpful. So it might be a different screen.
It's a different screen.
If you'd like, I can share from them.
That might be good. Let's see if this one works. Do you see anything now?
The first slide.
Did it change?
No.
I can't figure out which tray to share from them.
Lakeesha, I will share my screen.
Okay, great.
That way, you can continue on because, like I said, you're doing a beautiful job, and we don't want to interrupt your flow.
That's okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. I just told you this. Me and Zoom are not friends.
Here we go.
Okay, can you all see the main screen?
Yes.
Can you see the timeline? It's coming.
Yes.
Isn't she pretty?
There we go. It is pretty.
Wonderful. So would you mind just clicking for me when I say forward or advance?
Yes, I think I just blew it out again. Nope, we didn't. Okay. What's going on here? Okay. Go for it.
Okay, wonderful. So one of the things I wanted to start with in terms of how do we go from strategic to tactical, or from tactical to strategic, is beginning with leading from your seat. It's really important to think of yourselves as leaders before you're even in leadership. And some of you may be, I'm not sure, for all of the roles that you're in. But even before you become an actual leader with a title, leading from your seat is a crucial way of thinking about how you approach the job. And here is a quote from Simon Sinek. So give me some reacts if anyone's heard of Simon Sinek or seen any of his TED Talks. But he is one of my favorites. And I've got hearts. I love him. Yes, I see Melissa too. Wonderful. He's mine though, so everybody back off. You can watch him. No, I'm just kidding. But we'll talk about him a little bit later because I just can't help myself. But I love this quote that comes from that Golden Circle TED Talks that he did, which, I've linked some resources at the end of this presentation, Sarah, that you can feel free to send out. But he says that people who are leaders hold a position of power or authority. but those who lead inspire us. And that's important for us to remember, that we are capable of inspiring people from any role that we take within our organization, but most importantly, from human resources. And again, we tend to be the undervalued underdog of organizations, right? And I hear colleagues so often say, like, if I only had a seat at the table. That's a whole other presentation I could do a different day on how to take that seat at the table. We don't ask for it, we move into it and we sit. Because we are often discounted, we don't generate revenue, we tend to be a cost burden. And we don't necessarily communicate our value in business terms that make sense to C-suite leadership. And we'll talk about that as well. But in our role in human resources, we're the face of the organization, the first place that people go to before they even start with the organization. And we're the last place that they leave. And we see people in all forms at their best and their worst, after their marriages and divorces, after their parents pass away. We experience our own losses in our roles as well. And how we treat our people can inspire, or it can do the exact opposite. But also how we approach our work, as individual as it is, even if you're doing payroll, you can inspire. So it's important to think of ourselves as leaders, not with just a title, but that we lead to inspire. And that's really important, because that's where we really start to think more strategically. So if you could move forward just to the next slide. I've shared an article at the back of this deck from SHRM, from Harvard Business Review, and it's called "You Don't Need to Be the Boss to Be a Leader." It's a really great read. It's only a few minutes, and I encourage you to take a look at it. But there's 3 different ways that HBR has talked about embracing your inner leader if you're not in a leadership role. Number 1 is devoting time to daily growth. Now, that's a tough one for me, because I don't have time to grow every single day, especially with my volume of work between the 2 entities. But I do find time to step back and even read an article a day, whether it's what's happening currently at a micro level within my own state government, or if it's at the federal level. Lately, it seems to be all at the federal level. I think we're all sort of embroiled in that, especially if you work for an organization that is receiving federal funds. We're state entity, so we're going through the same things with affirmative action changes and DEI and what we can say and can't say, what's on our website. And just making sure that we're staying on top of things like that every day is part of our daily growth, because it continues to contribute not only to what we do for our organizations, but who we are as a professional. How interested are we in what we do, and how aware are we? Because that's what helps us to think ahead. Second is discovering and embracing your personal strengths. And this is an area where I really struggled for a period of time, because I tend to be an extroverted introvert. So I'm not necessarily a person that wants to be out and, the center of attention all of the time. I like to think about things before I speak, but I can be, if you know me really well, a loudmouth, silly, crazy, using humor to cope with everything kind of a person. And I was really nervous about how I presented in front of people, especially because I moved into leadership roles very early. So I sort of put on this bodysuit of a different person that I really admired, because I felt like if I could just reflect her, I'll be taken seriously. And what happened in that for me is it wasn't authentic to who I was, and it wasn't highlighting what I brought to the table. And it wasn't until I started to understand what my personal strengths were by listening and hearing from people what drew them to me, that I was able to really start to become my more authentic self, which takes us to number 3, improve your ability to connect with people. And if you read this article through HBR, it talks in more length about being empathetic and being authentic. And that is so, so, so important, to be able to become comfortable in your own skin as part of your journey. Now, that's a part of growth as well. I was very young when I got into leadership, and it was very difficult for me. I worked in a very homogenous environment, so I often stuck out. Generally, I was the only woman at the table in leadership, and I was certainly the only brown person at the table. I wore my hair super straight for a long time in a very tight bob, because somebody had told me my curly hair was unprofessional, and I was horrified. And then I realized one day I hate wearing my hair like this. It's not what grows out of my head. And it takes me so much darn time in the morning to get ready because I'm trying to create something that doesn't exist out of this wiry craziness. And I remember the day I went to work and I was just like, and I know it sounds so crazy, but I was bare knuckling it like, I'm going to walk in there with this crazy hair. And by God, I'm going to be as professional as I had been the day before. And not faking it helped. It was became myself. And so I think that's important, being your authentic self. Unfortunately, in Connecticut, we've had to pass a law called the Halo Law. Thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. I wasn't fishing, but I'll take it. We have had to pass the Halo Law in Connecticut. Other states have done the same as well to allow women and diverse women to be able to wear their natural hair without being told that you can't. That was passed in 2021, unfortunately. But it is here, and I'm able to say that I can wear my hair and feel very confident now. Now I almost feel not myself if my hair is too straight. But I tell that story because I think it's something that reflects a lot with all of us, in that some ways we put on the bodysuit of someone else to feel like ourselves. It's sort of our way of getting over that imposter syndrome. And I encourage you all to dig into what makes you feel good about yourself. And how can you be your authentic self? Because it will reflect with someone else. It will touch someone else, at someone through your journey. I've also found ways to identify and work with people just by being real. I lost a child early on in my career, about 16 years ago, almost 17. She passed away after birth. Her name is Cora. And I was just this like devastated version of a person coming back to work. I didn't even know who I was anymore. I remember the kindness of a few people who took me in and let me cry in their office when I couldn't make it through my day anymore. And one day I found strength in someone had connected with me and said, I'd been there myself. And she gave me space in her office. And I remember thinking, that's how I'll use this pain. I'm going to use that in my role in human resources to connect with people, to understand when they are going through something I don't understand. So when somebody loses a parent and I haven't felt that yet, I do know what that pain feels like. And so that's where I dig in on my empathy. Just remembering who I am as a person. It's so easy as a human resources person to just get caught up in well, it's part of life. Everybody's been through it. They just have to show up to work. And we hear managers talk that way very callously sometimes. And to remember that we all experience some sort of pain and anchor yourself in empathy is really important. Not everyone feels comfortable talking about the things that are painful to them, but it was a way for me to use something that happened to me and make it a strength, and to also honor my daughter's memory in that this is how I can pay it forward and that she's with me forever. If you could move on to the next page. Now, aside from embracing your inner leader and being your authentic self, you have to think about the business, right? You've got to think about yourself, feed yourself, determine who you're going to be as a leader authentically, and then start thinking about business needs at a greater level. So we talked a little bit about staying up to date, and you all are already on it. This is actually an amazing chapter. I sort of wish I was part of your chapter because we don't have quite this robust a program here in Connecticut, sadly. But it sounds like you're all communicating a lot and thinking about things that are going on. That's really important, even if you're in an individual contributor role. What is happening in the world, whether it's at a micro level, at a macro level, is it at your state level? What's coming down the pike that could change what you do in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 6 months? And how could you do something differently to prepare for that? Even just thinking about it as an individual contributor, if you start having those conversations with your leadership, with your supervisor, with your manager, you start to really be exposed to more of the bigger part of the business than you would have before. As soon as someone starts talking to me in my department about something that's bigger than just what they do, I immediately think of them as a thought partner. And I engage them. We're going to talk a little bit about some engagement of some folks in this way who really took ownership for some things because of their anticipation. And that will go really well for you as well. Not just for I have to be a leader to know these things, but I could just do I could understand more what the impact is of what I do if I pay attention to what's going on, even at a local level. If you could advance to that next slide. So I encourage you to constantly look at both the macro and the micro. We are all looking at the macro. We're just talking about the federal changes. You're already working on how to present information to the community moving forward. But what else is happening out there? So I use AI as an example. About 18 months ago, I wrote a brief to my then CEO about AI. And that generative AI was about to really take off. I had just been wrapping up my MBA, and I wrote a paper on AI and sort of the programmed bias that's at risk. And I turned it into a brief for my CEO to say, this is coming, the train is coming down the tracks, and we need to get on board. I invited in my chief technology officer. We talked about it, and then it sort of died on the vine. And here we are 18 months later, and it's all we can talk about, right? So that's what I'm really talking about. What's happening at the macro level that we know is coming down the road? AI is here, right? We could have been forecasting this for quite some time, but now we're here. Where does that take us as an organization? And even in your individual contributor role, what could AI do for you? What is the idea that you could bring forward? Because trust me, your leaders are going to be looking for your thoughts. AI is going to be developed internally and not necessarily purchased from the outside. So think in those ways. At a micro level on the right-hand side, I included this picture here of a handful of my staff, and this may be one of my most proud moments. I was able to have this great group of people join me to present. I was presenting at an executive onboarding for a cohort of about 20 executive leaders for our university and our health system. And I yielded my time to them. So nobody wanted to hear me present to them on what HR does. Nobody cares. All they care about is, do they get a paycheck? And, what does my retirement plan look like, right? At that point, nobody really cares about the nitty gritty. But what they would care about is hearing about how people in human resources were making changes to make their work life better or easier. And so these folks here on the right-hand side had all done something pretty significant. The gentleman to the right had been employed with us for already 20 years. He'd been doing the same job for that entire 20 years, sitting in the same office for the entire 20 years. And when I came to the organization, he came in, I went and did skip step meetings, and I said, if you have ideas, come to me. I want to hear them. We do need to modernize. I mean, we were just buried in paper at the time. He took me up on it. Within a week, he came into my office and said, I will run the project if you can help us get the software for us to go paperless. I know it can work. I know that I can do it. I won't ask for additional resources. We just need to be able to pay for it. He had a little presentation that he put together, wasn't anything huge. And within a year, we were able to get the funding. That was my job, just to go get the money, talk to the CFO, make sure that he understands the value of that. And over the last 2 years, he's run the project, and we are 80% paperless in a state system. Let me tell you something, 80% is way surpassing my dreams, because we still have things that do have to be done with wedding signature. And that man had done the same job in the same seat for 20 years, but he did something huge by thinking ahead and saying, I can do this. Here's the proposal. Here's what we can do, and here's how we can do it. And then it took me as a leader to go out and get the resources and give him the time and the opportunity and work with his director and allow him the opportunity to achieve that. And then to give him an opportunity to stand up in front of leadership and to talk about what he did. All of these people did something similar. There's a woman second in from the right. She was 25-year employee, same job, almost same office. She did move once. Same system. She's been using the same system for 25 years. And in the last 15 years, it had not been upgraded. And she said, I can make this work like a very modern system. I just need $5,000. And I'm like, you need $5,000? Like, we can write the check tomorrow. It took her 2 years to work on the project in small batches. She was able to make improvements. And now we have a vastly improved recruitment process from soup to nuts that's full cycle moving into an onboarding system. It is herky-jerky. Let me tell you something. We are a state organization. We do not have the best and the finest of HRIS tools. It is a Franken monster that we are gluing together. We are MacGyvering with tape and stickers and and prayer just to keep things running. But she has done what no one else has done and was 25 years in the same role. My point is, you can be an individual contributor and you can lead. And because these two people led in that way, they inspired others to come up with ideas. And the other three people that are in that group did something else, but they were inspired by their projects, and it keeps moving forward. So I encourage you to think macro, micro, what is it that is changing that I could change, that I could do within my one little thing? I work in payroll, and can I use AI in some way, or can we use paperless in some way that we haven't thought about? So I encourage you to think of those folks and to think of my wonderful people here who I adore so much. I would like a proud parent for that presentation. If you could move on to the next slide, please. Next, you need to learn to speak C-suite. And yes, it is its own language. So thinking about business needs is wonderful, and getting there. Oh, we've lost the presentation, I think. Can you guys
Coming back. It's coming back.
Okay, great. So you need to think of how do you communicate to C-suite, because that was what was important for me. I needed to be able to hear from my people what it is that they were proposing and how it was good for the business. They couldn't just come to me, right, and say, Lakeesha, we need paperless and we need this one. And then I would say, okay, talk to me. And if there's nothing more, I have nothing to sell to a CFO, right? So it's important for us to understand, how do we speak to the C-suite? Data is huge, and not just numbers. You can't use data with just no real purpose. You have to understand what you're talking about and what you're presenting. So make sure that you focused on the right data set for the right people at the right time. If you're going to the CFO, he or she does not want to hear from you the story of how wonderful something is. He doesn't care how wonderful it is. Your CFO cares about, what is the value proposition that you are offering? You're asking me to invest in something, and what does that do for the organization at large? So get your facts together, understand your data, understand your audience, again, who you're speaking to, and then make sure that you're representing and presenting a picture that makes sense. And always, always, always validate your data. Know what you're talking about before you go into a meeting. I have seen in my last organization I was telling you about with my finance bros, they were ruthless. I remember sitting in a meeting and someone was presenting information with an ask. And they were talking about how wonderful this project could be for the organization. It was going to have a benefit to the customers that were coming in. It was an inpatient residential treatment program, blah, 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 blah. And for me, I was so excited. I'm like, oh my God, this sounds amazing. The sound of it is amazing. And I'm thinking, wow, this guy's on top of the world. He was torn to shreds because he had not one bit of data that helped to show what the value proposition of the program was. And so was a really huge lesson for me, was to walk away and say, how do I present this data? And frankly, I didn't really know. I'd never had to present data in a way to people who were so very keen to dollars and cents and what that means. I actually took a leap of faith and walked to my CEO's office and said, listen, I want to present, but I want to present well. I want you to show me what it is that you need from me so that you can hear my story. And that took a lot of guts for me because it was embarrassing to have to ask that. But I was just so bowled over by the fact that he was so welcoming to that. And he took it as an opportunity to really teach me. Now, I will say that they shredded me anyway, because they wanted more and a deeper dive. And I think they put the screws to me a lot because I was the HR lady and they'd never had an HR person come in the door and ask for money in the way that I had. but it really taught me a lot. And I think that's important when you're talking about CEO speak. So I'm going to take a pause. I know the presentation isn't up again. Do you want me to try sharing again?
Did it stop?
I can see it.
Oh, you can. Okay, perfect. I cannot see it anymore. I don't know where.
It's in presentation mode. That may be why. But it's on Speak C-Suite.
Okay, wonderful. So then if you could go to the next slide then. And I don't know if you can play it with sound here, but there's a little video. And I just play this for ha-has because it is what other people hear from us when HR speaks.
There's not sound to the video.
Oh, there's a little button to click. We'll pass it, but it's basically blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
In summary, blah, blah, blah. So don't be that person.
Okay, so what I just heard? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so what I just...
Yes. So that's really, I mean, we don't want to be that person, right? That's when we get ignored and then we're not taken seriously. We're minimized. So learn how to speak C-suite. I did link an article as well at the end. This one's from SHRM and it's about human resources professionals and how to best start to learn to present to the C-suite. And it's got some really great detail about what you should do when you're walking in with the CFO, with chief counsel, with a chief transformation officer. So I really encourage you to read into those resources that I've attached because I think there's a lot of meat there that can be very helpful. And then if you go to the next slide, please, we'll start talking about managing change. And this is sort of to wrap up. I know we're a little behind on time and I apologize for that. But managing change is the thing that you can do also from your seat, regardless of where you are. And this is really, really, really important. And I saved it for last for a reason, because how you handle change can inspire others to either move with the change or to resist the change. And that can be down to the individual contributor role. In fact, I think how individual contributors respond to change initiatives makes or breaks an organization. Now, how leaders put forward change can make or break, right? But even with the best intentions, I've seen leaders who've done everything they can possibly do to navigate change and have a resistant group of people who just said, no, there's no way you're convincing me to change. Now, again, I work for state government, so that's sort of a common theme for this is how we've always done it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it can't change. And as an individual contributor, one person can be the voice that makes things move. When you become an HR leader, how you use your own resiliency to change. And I think we're experiencing that right now. We've got whiplash. It seems like every single week. An executive order is out, then it's challenged in court. Go, pause, stop, move, jump, stop, no. We're talking about in higher ed, we've got a pause on our grant funding because we don't know if we can use the grants right now. So really serious research, especially in our cancer realm right now, is on pause. And we're waiting to see what change will happen next. How will we navigate forward? What do we need to do to release those dollars? So how you lead from your seat, even as an individual contributor, is huge. And I'm going to bring us back to my friend Simon Sinek. If you could move forward to the next slide, please. And so I know some of you said that you're familiar with his work, which is wonderful. Again, he's mine, so just back off. But he's got this, it's an oldie but goodie, and it's about how leaders lead it. He talks about the golden circle. The TED Talk is linked in the back of the deck as well on the resources page. So if you haven't watched it, please watch it. It is so worth it. If you've already watched it, watch it again, because I watched it again last night and I'm like, man, it just hits true every single time. But one of the areas he talks about is that law of diffusion of innovation. And this is a business phenomenon that talks about the saturation point for when an item comes to market. So like a new iPhone. And if you're looking at the slide with the chart, you'll see the yellow and the green. You've got your early adopters and your innovators. Those are the people who are lining up. The innovators are the people who are creating it. The early adopters are the ones who are lining up. They're waiting 6, 12, 24 hours in line to get their iPhone, right? And then you've got the early majority. They're the people like me who are waiting to see, like, did the kinks get worked out yet? Because I don't want to spend $1,000 on it until I know that I can make a phone call. But the point is that there's all of these stages in change, not just when an item comes out, because this is what it's about for the law of diffusion of innovation, is about like when is that saturation point. But it's really, again, the same for how change happens. Will you be an innovator? Are you the person that's going to lead the change? Are you the person that's going to, from your seat, say, I have an idea, like Chris did with me, coming in and saying, I can do paperless if you help me get this product and here's how it will work? Will you be an early adopter who maybe you don't come up with the innovative change, but you see the innovative change, you see the attempt, and you're there to support it? Are you an early adopter who's got to think about it? I'm a person who needs to step back and think for a moment. Are the kinks worked out? I've got it. What we don't want to do is, if you could move to the next slide, is be part of the late majority and the laggards. I love that word, laggards. Laggards are the people who are like my dad, that I had to claw the phone, the flip phone out of his hand when I said, Dad, flip phone, like you can actually send me a message on a screen that you can read. Those are the laggards, right? They're the people who are probably never going to move unless you force them to. You don't want to be part of that group, right? Because that's where the resistance is coming. That's what's happening. Important to note here, and I pause here as a leader, we spend so much time focusing our energy on that last 16% on that chart, that 16% laggards. We have to remember those are the people that we're not going to move. Spend our energy as leaders trying to move the people in that first 16%, your innovators, your early adopters, even in your early majority. Get those people to move and stop focusing so much on the laggards, because you're investing your energy in an area where the dead weight just exists. You're not getting them to come along. You're either going to performance manage them to be satisfactory enough that they're working, or they're moving on to their new career, as I like to call it. If you could advance to that next slide, please. Again, the cute little happy heart. Being part of that innovators, early adopters, is where you really want to be as an individual contributor. If you're really thinking about how to become part of the business in a more strategic way, thinking about work in this way, in all of these ways that we've talked about today, helps to prepare you to be better from your own seat, even as an individual contributor. Not everybody has to want to be a strategic leader in the future. You don't have to want to be a CHRO, but I can tell you that once you find your purpose in an organization and you start to think bigger, you will fall in love with your job. And you can fall in love with your job of 25 years, just like Chris and Susan, the two people that I talked about today, who really found passion and value and are like these new people 20, 25 years later in their career doing the same work that they love doing. They don't want to lead. They don't want to be a chief HR officer. They just want to be really good at what they're doing. And so I encourage you, whether you feel like you're going to be a Chris or a Susan, or if you want to be like me and be a chief human resource officer and lead someday, thinking strategically provides value to you. If you could move on to that last slide before we get to the thank you slide. He's not my favorite person, but I do love this quote. Steve Jobs is an interesting character, but the only way to do great work is to love what you do. And if you haven't found it yet, keep looking, don't settle. Love what you do. Love what you can love payroll. I worked in payroll for a very short time, and I knew that it was not for me. It's not what I loved, but I love what I do in HR leadership in general. I think about it all of the time, and not in a negative way. I read constantly when I can't sleep at night, because I'm in that period of my life where things get hot in the middle of the night and I'm scrolling through my phone, and 90% of the time I'm reading something that has to do with human resources or employee engagement or employee wellness, because that's what feeds my soul when it comes to my career. So I encourage you to do that for yourself. You deserve it. Your organizations deserve it. And so do your people. I apologize. I took up a little bit more time than I had, so I'll stop here. I know we don't have a ton of time for questions, but if you have any, I'd be happy to answer. I've put my LinkedIn on the last slide there. There's resources. And feel free, if you don't have time to ask me something today and you want to reach out, please truly connect with me, and I'd be happy to respond. Thank you very much for having me today.
I just want to say Thank you, Lakeesha. That was an incredible presentation. Sarah had told me you were a wonderful presenter, and she 100% was correct. So thank you.
Well,
I
thank
hope
you. I'm so
everyone
glad.
got as much out of that as I did. So
Wonderful.
thank you so much for your time. We've certainly appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone have any questions for Lakeesha?
Lakeesha, if you'll stop sharing your screen.
Oh, am I still sharing? Am I the sharing one?
Well, I think it's still there in the background.
Oh boy.
No, 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 it's fine. It's fine.
There we go.
Thank you.
Let's see. Terry has asked if you can give us those links so we can put them in the chat, please.
They'll be in the Friday newsletter
Okay. Thank you, Marianne.
along with the slideshow.
Perfect. Thank you. I also want to compliment your slideshow. It was very pretty. Like the colors were very, very nice. If we had an award for that, you'd win it. Does anyone have any questions for Lakeesha? All right. Well, thank you again, Lakeesha. I certainly enjoyed it. I hope everyone else got as much out of it as I did. We just have a couple of announcements. First, this is a reminder that next month we will not have our regularly scheduled fourth Tuesday of the month meeting. We will have our annual conference, which will be on the 21st. If you have not registered, please go in and do so. If Ray put a note in the chat, if you did not see it, she is looking for a volunteer to help with the membership booth at the annual conference. So she's put her email in the chat. If you are interested in volunteering and helping Ray, please email her so that she will not be alone at that table, because I think she's going to need some assistance. Let's see. The other thing I was going to add is we will now be going into what we're calling the after show. We will be discussing how are we going to approach DEI in light of today's current environment. So if you have a few more minutes, I promise not to take up too much of your time. But if you have a few more minutes, we'd love to have you join us. Thank you to everyone for being here today. The video. All right. I guess this is our group for the after meeting, for the after show. We all know there's been a ton of change. As Lakeesha said, executive order, then a court injunction or overruling of an executive order. It's been kind of a wild month. Feels longer than a month, but it's only been a month. So I'm here today. I want to have this discussion about how are you planning to approach DEI in light of the new environment in which we find ourselves. Anyone have any thoughts?
I'll start so we get the ball rolling. We, as a federal contractor, have some additional considerations with affirmative action and things like that. We have baked in DEI into our culture and our processes, so we don't really plan to change much how we operate. We just plan to make the needed changes in some language. And that's pretty much it. We're still going to have a focus on the DEI tenets within our organization. We're going to change our DEI. We have a DEI plan, and we have like an inclusion council. We're keeping our inclusion council intact with the same name. We are going to change our DEI action plan to an engagement action plan.
Yeah, I think Paige and I touched on this during our board meeting the other day, but if you are in a situation where it is easy to rip DEI out, it was never really part of your culture anyway. And I think we've seen some corporations who are struggling with that now. They decided that they would pull that just out and they would make that announcement. And I think they're suffering some consequences, whether or not they're comfortable.
Target.
Page.
I don't think they
But whether
understand
they're
what it
comfortable with
is.
that, I cannot say, but their sales are certainly not trending in the way I would think they would want them to.
Yeah.
I
don't think folks understand what DEI is, that maybe there were some folks who did use it in a way that it wasn't intended, but it's just a structure of fairness already. It's already based on merit.
Yes. In fact, I think it gets us to a more merit-based consideration of people, because we're getting more, hopefully we are getting more people to apply. We are getting more people in interviews so that we can start that process with more merit-based hires. I think that's the part I find confusing, is that if you really understand it, I think it's always been an attempt to get merit-based hires. Who is the best person for this job?
I also think something that people don't really like aside from like the hiring, because obviously like in HR, that's, kind of a focus. But, when it comes to creating task forces or committees within your company, making sure that you do have a diverse representation sitting at the table. Because when I think about my kids and like their schools, or when I think about, the medical field, like I don't want a group of the same type of people sitting at a table to make decisions that could impact me or my family. And so the same goes for the financial industry or engineering or, whatever other industry is out there is, like I think we as leaders, when we go to create, groups and try to get thoughts and opinions, that we're very, very intentional about making sure that we have not even just like, different people that look different, but, sometimes I see where like the same people are selected to be on those kind of task forces. And I feel like that's also not fair. Like you've got to give people a chance, just to have a seat at the table and just to share their perspective. And, maybe they come to the table and they don't really have a lot to say, but at least they were there. At least they were provided that opportunity. And so for me, that's big. That's one thing that I've been really big on at CFSB is when we've created things is, just trying to make sure that we include different people, for different things, because like we're not supposed to think the same. We're supposed to be challenged because it's going to help us grow. And while that may make some people feel uncomfortable, which I think is the biggest issue right now with the villainization of DEI efforts, that's part of it. Like we're not supposed to think the same.
Engineering is a heavily male-dominated field. Like if I look at the numbers, I think 85% of people who graduate from engineering school are white men.
Right.
So it is very heavily dominated in that male arena just because of that fact. Whenever I hear our CEO talk about when our company started to grow and when it really started to take off, he talks about how it was bringing in diverse opinions and bringing women into leadership. And what a change that made, because they weren't all thinking the same.
Right.
They had that difference of opinion, and it was revolutionary in our company as far as our trajectory and where we've come to and where we're headed.
Yeah, a good example, I remember that it wasn't that long ago, maybe a couple years ago. And y'all probably know Amina in Paducah, but she was like on the she was like a parent person on like a committee for Paducah City Schools. And there was something about trying to like ban students from being able to wear like picks in their hair because they thought it could be seen as a weapon. And because her or somebody else of color that was on, a parent that of color was on that committee, they were able to express that like that is like part of their culture. Like that is something that they use to, actually comb their hair. That is not a weapon. Like without that perspective, then that table would have literally just like banned that, from students. And, like I just think about little things like that. Like, like does that affect me on it? No, but just having that perspective at the table just to say, hey, wait a minute, like let's think about this.
A great example.
Well, going, further into what Paige just said, it could be cultural, but it also could be religion or norms for people coming from different areas. Even our own country, acceptable norms are different a few counties over. We don't think about that. We think it's states over. So the more people that we bring to the table with those different perspectives, you will actually receive different business outcomes, because you may be trying to get business in an area that you're not familiar with or trying to grow and branch out. If you had the same opinions and everybody looks the same with the same backgrounds at the table, you're not going to grow. You've stunted your own growth before you ever started.
Also be age. I think that gets overlooked a lot. And I mean, if we're applying the same logic, it gets a little dicey because some of the folks making some of these decisions could be in the group that's discriminated against, you know? A lot of different things.
Are any of you familiar with Kat Kibben? She helps people, like she's really in the hiring space, like in the recruiting space, where she is helping people like write job posts that are open so that, you know, people feel welcome to apply. She actually has a blog, and I got her, coincidentally, I got her blog this morning, and this one is about merit-based hiring and where are we and what is the goal here. But she's actually starting a 3-week series. So if you're not signed up for her blog, I find it helpful just to get different perspectives on how to write job descriptions and job postings and how to make those inclusive.
What was her name again?
Kat, K-A-T, Kibben, K-I-B-B-E-N. She also offers a course on how to write effective job postings, and it's not terribly expensive. I think it was a couple $100. But I've just found her to be a really good resource. And I think she's spoken at National SHRM before, but I can't remember.
Okay. Another thing that Lakeesha said that I really appreciated was just her transparency, like, you know, with having to take a step back, like with her career, you know, like I just feel like mental health is not talked about enough, you know, in the workplace. And I just love that she hit head on, like, you know, just the struggles as a woman, you know, in a professional setting and just what that meant. Like that spoke volumes to me.
Yeah.
I also appreciated when she talked about her hair because while we think about it within the African American community with halos and crown acts, having curly hair all of my life, I was always told to straighten it in order to be seen as professional. And so I resonated with it. That the minute I chopped my hair off and went curly, it was such a grace to be able to have. So, you know, it addresses we all have something that we think about in order to become more authentic.
Mhm. I love that part of her talk. Also, Marianne, you need to know that Ray and I had a whole discussion about how fabulous your hair is the other day.
We did.
And
We
I meant to tell
really
you that because
did.
I
We
need to
didn't
know
mean
what
to
you
do
put
it.
in there to get all that volume.
It's great.
It's just wildness. That's it. It's just wild. And that's the reason why I'm not on camera today because it is so wild. I have a spray that I use to kind of tame it just a little bit,
Uh-huh.
but it is just wild.
I get it, Marianne. I mean, my hair's naturally curly and I straighten it just because I can't find a product that I actually like love. So
I was shocked when I finally found it, but I also
yeah.
found the right stylist. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. But
Yeah,
I
maybe I need
really
to go
loved
to a curl
today's Zoom
specialist.
meeting. I was
yeah,
like, I just need to know what Marianne's doing to her hair. It looks so amazing.
but
So,
you know,
Body is just
even
beautiful.
even
And
a friend of mine who works in the Louisiana governor's office, she talks about it. And she was scared to death to let her curls go wild. And she finally did. And within a few months, she got a promotion. And she was like, I'm just shocked but it's because she finally relaxed and became who she was. But that first day of letting the curls fly, you know, was really hard on her. But now, you know, she's wearing it and embracing it, and I love that.
no, I totally understand that. I have very, very curly hair, and I do straighten it a lot or curl it with a curling iron to smooth it out because it feels crazy.
I mean, I got braids back in June because we went to Mexico for my birthday, and I had a friend ask me, like, you know, what the bank was going to say about my hair, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, it's not unprofessional. I'm fine.
That's good.
I actually loved my braids.
All right. Anyone else have anything they'd like to share with how you're going to approach DEI at this point? I think our approach is probably going to be we're going to keep doing what we were doing before because it did encourage those things. Even if we don't call it that, we're going to keep those things up, trying to make sure we get the a broad group of applicants and selecting in a way that is not, biased, so that we're still getting the right person, the person who deserves that job, whoever they are.
So Paige, I hope this will help with your article, just to have some thoughts on what you're hearing from your own local chapter.
Yes, and also there were some things that I saw within Lakeisha's presentation that I thought might be good too.
Yes, yes. We're so proud of what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Well, don't kudos yet, because I was like halfway through writing it yesterday and my laptop died at Piper's. So
It wasn't the day.
no, IT was like, I don't know that we're gonna be able to save that. I'm like, well, then I guess I'm starting over. So yeah, we'll get it though.
Anyone else who hasn't contributed have anything else to add?
Guys, I've had to pop in and out, so good discussion from what I've heard. It's just been a busy day, but the only other thing that's top on my mind is just the addressing the uncertainty and fear that I know employees are feeling. And I think in our role in HR, we've got to have a pulse on the organization, but even more so when we know that there's so much uncertainty, we've really got to care for people and lean into that, even when we don't have all the answers of what is our organization going to do, or what is this going to look like, or, what's a new policy, because that uncertainty is there, even, it's present even when we don't have all the answers. And so we can't shy away from that.
Empathy, just have empathy for people.
Yep, that's
To me,
exactly right.
that's going to be the closing of my article. I promise, is that at the root of it, it's empathy. You may not understand somebody's lived experience, but please just be kind.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, thank you all. I enjoyed the discussion. I'm looking forward to doing more of these. I would love to have ideas on topics. And when Lakeesha said something about AI, it occurred to me we could do a whole topic on AI and how are we each individually using AI. But I want to hear your ideas too, if you have any about what we can talk about in April after our meeting. So
we have a conference presentation on AI in HR, so that would be a great starting point.
Yeah, good idea, Marianne. All right. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. Have a great day. We'll see you in 3 weeks. Yeah. Well, we can do this, Marianne. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. We got this.
We got it. We got it. We got it.
All right. Thank you all.